Welcome to Breaking Barriers today with Generation Women, and I have a fantastic guest that I'm really excited for you to meet and learn from. Marcelle Rose, who is a nutritionist extraordinaire. So I will give you the official bio. I'm really excited to learn from you and to have a discussion which we'll get into in a minute, but I'll share a little bit about myself and why I was excited to speak with Marcelle today. Because Marcelle empowers women to overcome binge eating, emotional eating, and eating disorders. And I loved when we spoke originally, you called it disordered eating. And for some reason, that resonated more with me than eating disorders, because probably a lot of us uh, recognize we have disordered eating, but wouldn't necessarily say we have an eating disorder. You enable women to reclaim their lives through a unique synergy of nutritional therapy, eating psychology, and mindset coaching. So I feel like Marcelle is like to food and nutrition what I am to career and leadership. So I felt we had a lot in common. You've authored a brilliant best-selling book, The Binge Freedom Method, which is your four-pillar plan to beat emotional eating for good, and is a BANT registered nutritionist and coach with specialist training in eating disorders, behavior change, and you consult with clients nationwide and worldwide, supporting women in your free Facebook community, the Food Freedom Collective, which I actually haven't joined, but I will be running off to join straight after this chat. It's lovely to have you here, Marcelle. And we'll get you to
Thank
share your
you.
story in a minute. But when your name came to me and I saw what you do, it really got me thinking about this time of life. So I probably, and it's maybe not a surprise to anybody that knows me, have not had the best relationship with food throughout my life. Which started probably like a lot of people with trauma. So I lost my dad quite young, and it was at that point I distinctly remember it gave me a bit of control in my life uh, to control my eating, and that's what I did for a while, and didn't probably see it as problematic till much later in life when my weight started to go up and down and up and down. And usually I could get control of it. And why I mean, Marcel, you deal with all different areas that we will look into, but a lot of the followers and watchers of this will know we talk very much about perimenopause as well as the other issues, and that time of life when you're maybe at your most successful, you've got pressure coming from all different places. And that was actually the point. I didn't know it, but my eating was probably one of the first indicators that I was in perimenopause and putting on weight, and suddenly found myself with this body that I didn't know anymore and felt completely unable to do anything about it because of all the other blooming symptoms that were exhausting me and making me feel out of control and all the rest of it. So this is why this is a subject so dear to my heart, and I know is a huge thing for so many women. And I'm absolutely delighted that you could join me today for this conversation. So thank you, Marcel.
Well, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
So, do you want to tell us a bit about your story then, and how you came to this position where you're now helping women with one of the most challenging parts of their life?
Yes. So I started off in sort of more general nutrition. I was working with quite a lot of people with digestive problems, but also just general nutrition. And then I noticed there were lots of people coming to me, especially women, particularly women, coming to me wanting help with weight loss. It wasn't anything that it wasn't an area I was interested in doing or working with. But I recognized there was something else going on with, there was more, there was something deeper. And I didn't feel equipped to be able to sort of dig deeper and help them at the time. I had my nutrition training, but I felt like there was an emotional element, there was other things, there was kind of root things that needed to be looked at and addressed. So I did my health coach training, and coaching is really helpful, but I still felt like, right, I need to do something else. So I then embarked on the eating disorder and eating distress training, and that's primarily eating psychology and behavior change work, and really understanding what's going on in terms of the thinking, the beliefs, it's the whole picture. And so after that, I was just like, this is fascinating. And here are the sort of some strategies and tools that I can combine. And it took me a while to sort of work out how to combine sort of all these key elements with the nutritional therapy, to then be able to really help, particularly women, and many of the women that I work with are going through perimenopause, they're midlife women, and which I think many surprising, because when you think of eating disorders, for example, you think of mainly, adolescent girls particularly, but as we know that eating disorders can affect anyone of any age, any any age, gender, background, ethnicity, etc. So, but you mentioned the whole thing about disordered eating and eating disorders, and really eating disorders is like, if you think of a spectrum, you've got eating disorders at one end of the spectrum, and say normal eaters at the other. But there's this whole spectrum of disordered eating behaviours that many people probably experience and have challenges, perhaps might not see themselves as a disordered eater, but they might
Yeah.
be somewhere on that spectrum.
That's really interesting, and I want to delve into that, certainly as we get into the chat. But I know you have, it's maybe not a secret past to the people that know you, but your career, you didn't come out a nutritionist, did you? You had a very interesting career beforehand, and now, well, to me, anything that's to do with psychology and helping women step up is the most interesting thing you can do. But your past life was pretty darn amazing as well.
Yeah, I mean, I was a fashion buyer, and I trained actually initially as a textile designer and ended up as a fashion buyer. So, yeah, it's a bit of an about term, because I'm now really helping people with body image. Not so sure I was helping people with body image originally, but anyway, perhaps in some way. But so I do find it quite amusing that I've done this kind of complete, very different, career change,
Yeah.
essentially.
And what sparked the interest in nutrition and that nutrition, not nutrition, and that complete change from fashion buying, and what I'm sure was a very, I would imagine a very fast paced, very probably quite challenging environment to be in. Then to go to down this path.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a very stressful environment. There was parts of it I loved. I was a lot younger then, and it was managing. I was able to manage the lack of sleep. I was sort of burning the candles at both ends. I probably wasn't looking after myself very well. Probably wasn't, nourishing myself very well. There was a lot of travel, which was great, but it was just go, 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 go. And I think it got to the point where I realised it was affecting me, my health. I struggle with IBS, and that's what got me probably interested in the nutrition. And after I'd had my first child, I thought, I'm so fascinated in this, and then started to look into how I could retrain. And I managed to. I think I saw a nutritionist for myself and for my daughter when she was a toddler. She had digestive issues, and I realized, oh, there's something really interesting in this. And I still love that area as well. I'm still fascinated by that because a lot of the people that I work with also have digestive problems, which goes kind of very much hand in hand with disordered eating.
Brilliant. And I really love that, because one of the things I realized early on, and I spoke about my experience, and I've shared this before, that I believe I'm probably ADHD, which lends itself to a lot of disordered eating. I think the traits of it, the impulsivity, you know, getting lost in something and then realizing you haven't eaten anything, and suddenly, being starving, there's lots that goes on. And I, being a graduate of psychology and having that fascination, I love that you recognized quite quickly that there's something much bigger going on with women. And I think that the further we get into this social media world and this whole, everything is filmed, photographed, everything is compared, there's this even greater pressure on women to look and feel and be a certain way. And that's all our psychology. So you've got a big job ahead of you, Marcelle. But
Yeah,
yeah, I'd love to dig into that. So what was the point where you just went, yeah, I need to know more about this. I know there's more I can do to help people. It's bigger than just what we're eating.
yeah. I think because I realised that, and this is true for most people that come to work with me. There is that strong desire to either be able to lose weight or fear of weight gain, and it's just it's so wrapped up in so many other things. So I think I just wanted to understand what was going on, what was behind it. And we know that, I think in the media, you're made to feel like, well, if you don't fit the body ideals that we're, shown in the media, that you're not, perhaps you're lazy or greedy or you've got no willpower. And I really wanted to understand what else, it's too simplified, the whole idea that it's just what you eat and what you burn. There's so much going on, and with women who are tackling hormonal shifts, particularly in midlife, but even on a monthly basis with their periods. Um, you mentioned ADHD, for example. That's something that I'm seeing more and more now in clinic, that women are either being diagnosed very late, later in life, or kind of self-diagnosing in a way, saying, I'm pretty sure I've got ADHD. And with many people that I'm working with who struggle with binge eating, that's very often goes hand in hand. As you said, there's the kind of impulsivity, but there's also that, perhaps hyper focus you see more with women, where you're into a task and you sort of have that less of that interoception, where you're not recognizing certain cues, body cues, and hunger is one of them, until you get over hungry or you're over full, and it's sort of trying to identify what goes in between that, and trying to reconnect with your body's cues. So but there's a number of different reasons why we think there's that link, but that's certainly one of them. And perhaps the whole link with the idea that someone with ADHD might have, for example, less availability of dopamine. So they're looking for that stimulation. And that's what we see a lot with binge eating as well. So, yeah, there's just
Oh
so
my
much.
goodness. That resonated so much, and not having that understanding that that's what's going on, and then the whole guilt cycle
Yeah,
of reaching for chocolate, because it is that dopamine hit. It's looking for, or self-soothing, or something like that. And I know not everybody watching will maybe relate to being neurodivergent, but I think it's not unique to to
yeah,
ADHD brains for sure.
yeah.
So wow, like we will hopefully get into a bit more of that. But one of the things then you said, you're often working with women at this midlife stage. So what are the things that you see them coming to you for, and how do you help them?
So I work, as I said, a lot with women who are struggling with binge eating. Some people might come to me who might call themselves an emotional eater. They might just realize that there's something going on with their relationship with food. They probably had years and years of on and off diets, restricting, fasting, all sorts of things, trying everything, and still feel like they're out of control around food. Often these women, feel overwhelmed. Often many of these women are, they can be in like sort of high profile jobs, and be amazing at their jobs, but really struggling with this and don't understand why. And yeah, they feel there's a lot of guilt and shame around it. There's a lot of feeling like, but I'm an intelligent person. I know what I should be doing. Why can't I do it? There's a lot of all of that narrative going on, I think. And we know that during midlife that, our bodies do change as they do during adolescence, which is why it's actually a much more than is ever talked about, I think, that this relationship between perimenopause and disordered eating. We see our bodies change, we see changes in our metabolic rate, um, reduced muscle mass, which affects the metabolic rate, and all of those things. So we've got this body changes going on, and then we've got the the debilitating, often for many women, symptoms going on at the same time. So you're battling with that. And then there's often other sort of life events going on. You've got grown up children, perhaps elderly parents that you're also caring for. And it's like the perfect storm, really. So you've got a lot of stress, anxiety, all these symptoms, body's changing. The thing that perhaps many women used before as a sense of, you mentioned yourself as trying to control, perhaps it kind of worked for them in the past, but no longer does. And you've got that everything going on at once, really, that creates that really difficult, really challenging time. And then I think for many women, they feel completely out of control around that, or they're trying to control more, maybe by just trying to restrict, which often leads to binge eating or emotional eating, or feeling more out of control.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking that of that. I'm seeing that women on the professional side of things, and they're trying to hold it all together at work, and all this is going on. And like you say, the symptoms that are actively working against you, like not sleeping, anxiety, um, you know, not having energy to exercise
Mm,
like you want to do, and just not having the energy to really care about what's going into your mouth anymore. It's just like I'll eat, I'll just eat because I need to eat, or to
mm,
comfort yourself with all the things going on. And so I think it's really powerful how you saw beyond what women were coming to you with, which is probably a weight problem, as they might have described it at the time, to actually see, yeah, I mean, I can tell you what's the best things to eat and how to approach that. But it's the whole emotional, psychological piece to work on to actually make that happen. And so,
Yeah.
what's your process then, if when someone comes to you that you would go through to help them?
So we would start very slowly and with small steps, and I'd really start from where they're at. So usually start nutritionally, but we kind of then duck in, and it becomes a kind of coaching process as we move along. But I would never just see them and say, here, go away and follow this meal plan. That just doesn't work. It's really important that the women that I work with feel empowered, and they start to own that, what they're doing, and become their own coach in a way. So we look at where they're at with their eating, and at first, maybe for some people who are fasting or avoiding or restricting meals or very chaotically eating, we'll start with just working towards putting in 3 basic meals a day and any snacks if needed. But we go very slowly depending on how the speed at which they need to go, because I think what's really important is that you're just doing step by step and recognizing that you've done that bit. You can do that, because I think a lot of the women that I work with, they have this feeling of lack of efficacy around that they can actually do anything, they can create any change. So it's really important that you start slowly and build. And it's very much about adding in, because I think a lot of people think, what should I be taking out of my diet and removing and stripping out, and food groups, foods, different types of foods. But it's really about, okay, what can we add in and bring in variety, balance into their diet, and pleasure from eating. It's not about just being miserable as well. You want to enjoy your food, but also nourish your body at the same time. So that's probably an area that I start with. But while we're going through, it's really about starting to understand their patterns of behaviour and eating. So we start to understand what might be the cues or triggers to perhaps a binge eating episode or emotional eating episode, and really try and understand what's going on with their appetite as well. So it's almost like part of the work is appetite retraining. So we're retraining, learning, actually not just when you're over hungry or over full, starting to realize, no, I'm feeling quite satiated now, I'm feeling satisfied, or actually I'm hungry now and I do need to eat. I shouldn't try and avoid it or push it away, or try and forget about it till I'm over hungry, because that's something that can often lead to uncontrolled, um, unhelpful eating.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Um, and it's so interesting thinking about the parallels of what we do. It's quite a similar process I go through working with leaders, because we're probably working on different sides of their stress. Like, I'm trying to help them manage their boundaries and manage. I look at self care as very much being about how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you manage your brain, so that you can be your best self. And it sounds like that's exactly what you're doing from an eating and nutrition and side. And I love that idea. It's not about what you take away, it's about what you add. It's how you nourish yourself through food, and how you look after your brain and yourself in that way. So that's really fantastic to hear. And something we've talked a bit about already, I'm just wondering, can we delve into it a bit more? So you mentioned, as teens, it's a real time when eating could become disordered because of hormones. At perimenopause, probably pregnancy. That was one of the times actually when my eating went completely out of the window, because I think that trained me into being ravenous all the time, wanting
Yeah.
wanting sweet things continuously. And so, like, what have you seen that really helps you with that management? Because obviously, like, your hormones are playing such a big part in how you feel and approach eating. So what are you
Yeah.
seeing that helps with that?
I think what you touched on before, one of the things that can really help is the self-compassion element, and the working towards that self-care, because when you've got an awareness and an understanding of what's going on, and you're not blaming yourself and you're not beating yourself up and you're not feeling like I failed, so I might as well just carry on, or that sort of all or nothing mindset around food, and you can actually you can really begin to then create change. So first of all, it's that awareness. What are the cues and the triggers to my eating behavior? And if it's hormonal, that's one of those things that you can then say, it's okay. This is what's the one most helpful thing I can do for myself right now, rather than I'm rubbish, I fail, might as well just, go for a pack of biscuits, because I've blown it anyway. So it's thinking about understanding what you can do for yourself, from a kind of compassionate point of view. And we talk about, when I talk about someone having a binge eating episode, for example, I like to call it a learning experience, because actually we can learn so much from that experience. So someone who's going through these hormonal fluctuations, we can understand what's going, and talk about what's going on with the reason behind their cravings. And we know that when our serotonin drops, when our and actually low serotonin brings on cravings for carbohydrates and sugar, and that's just something that's a very useful bit of information to know, so that you're not blaming yourself and beating yourself up. And then you've got that idea, okay, what are some of the key things to happen to that I can do for myself when I'm going through a particularly challenging time with cravings? Well, actually, I know that, by adding in making sure I'm having some protein, some fiber, and natural fats in my meal can help regulate those cravings a little bit and help them subside from a physical point of view. Obviously, there's many reasons for cravings, but if it's physical, that could really help. So it's like, okay, what could be a very simple thing that I can make for myself right now that's easy, to help me feel better. And it's not about saying, no, you can't ever have the sugar or the chocolate, but it's perhaps, okay, how can I do something loving for myself, such as, I think actually a lot of my clients quite like to do they get a little bento box with the little compartments. And so they might put in a couple of pieces of dark chocolate, they might put in some berries, they might put in some, they put in a whole mix, some nuts or whatever. And it's almost like they're doing something very kind for themselves that they actually enjoy. And they're giving themselves that snack if they need it.
I love that, and I do that for my kids. Why am I not doing it for me? I am
Yeah.
so going to get myself one of those boxes, and yeah, and do that little act of self care, and yeah, that makes so much sense. And that piece, yeah, about the hormones, and I think it is so important to know the chemistry of what's going on in your body, because it helps you manage the brain. I have this expression I use with clients, the lie of the hormones. Your hormones are triggering your brain in all different ways, that's creating these lies and nonsense.
Mm,
But if you don't know that, it's like, well, this is how it's supposed to be, or you're just following along with the lie and telling yourself a story that makes it okay. But just be, I notice you kind of use that, like, label it, catch it, catch it, label it, and let's reframe it, to be something kinder. This is your body working against you, but if you know that, here's the steps you can take then to manage
Mm,
it, and that
exactly.
brings some control back into the whole process, because I
Yeah.
think that's what we feel at this time, is so out of control, isn't it?
Yes.
So love it.
That's, and yeah, and as you say, I mean, if you we can't always control the situation, but we can control our thoughts. And if we can shift our thoughts slightly, then it can change the outcome and how we're feeling about ourselves as well. So, I think there's one of the things that I speak to my clients about is the fact that these thoughts are not facts. And how can we slightly shift your perception of the situation that's going on? Um, Even if you can't necessarily change the fact that your boss is a nightmare, or really stressing you out, um, unless you leave your job, you can't change that. But what can you do to change your kind of perception of the situation and how you're dealing with it? So you can work on that reframing of your thoughts around that.
Yeah, and that makes the marriage of what we do so great, because one of the things I would be saying is, how are you creating that situation in your, what boundaries are you putting in, how are you managing that person, and then how are you managing your brain's reaction to that, so that you're not going down that stress pathway. um Brilliant. So I know one of the things we talked about when we had a little pre-chat is, quite often I would love women to come to me before things become a really big problem. I think we are so used to just hunkering down, trying to deal with it ourselves, feeling like if I have to ask for help, then, that must mean I'm really broken. Everybody else can sort this out. And so, what are some of the signs that you wish people would pay attention to and go, right, I'm going to go and get some help now while it's easier to solve, rather than wait until you're at, I can't do this on my own anymore point, which of course we can help with, but
Yeah, yeah, no, it's a really good point, because I think, yeah, a lot of the people that I get calls from initially to find out how I can help them is they're saying, I should be able to do it myself, and they've kind of waited quite a long time of really struggling. But yeah, so some of the signs to look out for are things like how you're talking about yourself, how you're thinking, the thoughts about your body. Are you thinking about food, your weight, your body, diets a lot of the time? Is it beginning to consume your life? Um, is it affecting how you're feeling physically? Are you beginning to feel all sorts of things because your eating behavior might be chaotic or starting to be chaotic? Have you been on many diets? Is it affecting your, is it affecting your digestive system, your hormones possibly? So it's just starting to notice signs that perhaps you're thinking a lot about trying to shrink your body essentially, and you'll do anything you can to do that. So going type diets, and this is an extreme diet, because also we have a society that normalizes a lot of disordered eating behaviors, such as going on diets and excessively exercising in order to control body size, and or to compensate for what you've eaten, etc. Those things are kind of celebrated, aren't they, in our society, when actually they can lead down a kind of slippery road into disordered eating and even eating disorders.
Yeah, and you see it definitely. I think, I mean, women and men. This is a challenge for. But you see, like, a lot of memes and jokes and that kind of thing about how to manage, about managing stress through shoving a chocolate bar in, or drinking more wine, or whatever it may be, and certainly a lot of that became normalized, that you hit a certain point in life and that's just what you do.
Mm,
So
yeah, it's
that,
also, yeah, that's, I mean, that's a good point. It's, using food as a coping mechanism. And look, I think we all, most of us, emotionally eat. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just about, is this becoming your only coping mechanism? And are you feeling distress after it? Are you feeling guilt and shame? Are you being very secretive about it? Is it something that's taking over your life in that way? So, yeah, those are some of the things that can really you can start to think about and think, actually, this is no longer serving me, because often the behaviors start as a way of serving you for some reason. um, like you said with yourself, that you felt like you had a sense of control in a very difficult time in your life. But what usually happens is, down the line, it becomes that it's not no longer serving you, and actually can be quite harmful, and destructive.
absolutely. Um, it's nearly time to wrap up, so I'd just love it if you had a couple of tips or things that you found really help people. So if there was any last advice, support, tips, strategies, anything that you think would be helpful for anyone watching this.
Yeah, I think I mentioned before about um, reconnecting with your appetite, and so I have actually I've got a starter kit. It's called the Breaking Cycle Starter Kit. So it's got the hunger scale on there that you can use, and some steps that you can take to start to tune into your body, because a lot of people find it really, really hard. So using that to tune in before you eat, and especially, and when you finished, where was I? What number was I on the hunger scale? Without the judgment. It's not about being critical to yourself. It's like just being curious. Okay, that's really interesting. You know, I was at 0, so I was over hungry, so I started before I ate, and therefore that might have led to me making probably less helpful choices around the food. Or I realized that I ate till over fullness there. Or perhaps and then you can start to tune into when you're feeling like, yes, I'm ready to eat now. So that's one thing that would be really helpful. um, and then other thing is trying to regulate your meal timings. I know there's so much around fasting and all of that at the moment still. But if you are struggling, and particularly with things like binge eating, or if just generally chaotic eating, the best thing you can do is have regular meal times in, so your body starts to know and adapt. And everything in terms of the metabolism of the cells works in line with your body clock, so it's all working with you. And you have your breakfast, lunch, and your dinner, and recognize if you need a snack, being prepared, perhaps with some more helpful snacks, something with a bit of protein in it, that can help sustain you. And it doesn't mean don't ever eat chocolate ever again. It's not about restricting and having forbidden foods. It's more about, okay, if I'm going to have some chocolate, perhaps I'll have something else with it, and that will help regulate my blood glucose a little bit, so I'll get less of that dip. So I'd say kind of starting with those things can be really helpful. And I've got some more detail about how to do that in this in my sort of free starter kit as well, so that can help.
Brilliant. I'm going to post a link to the free starter kit with the recording so that people can download that. And of course, your brilliant book is available, The Binge Freedom Method. So I'm assuming that's available on Amazon and the usual places and spaces. Is there a preferred place you like people to go and get that?
I mean, I think for ease, it's Amazon is great, but if you don't like buying from there, then it's on waterstones.com. It's Barnes and Noble, all the different places. The main places is fine. And yeah, and with the book, you get a free downloadable workbook, you get a free downloadable recipe book, and some audios as well. So it's kind of not just the book, and also you can join my Facebook group as well, which there's details in there, where you can get support as you're working through the action steps in the book.
Brilliant. So lots of help and support there. Thank you so much for being here today, Marcelle. I've really got a lot from our conversation, and I'm sure anyone watching will get a lot from it, as well as the fantastic resources that you're sharing. So thank you so much. Great to
Oh,
have
thank
you.
you. Thanks very much.